ambitious diplomatic agenda is a clear in the world. Following Prime Minister Modi's historic June visit to the United States and September, increasingly clear that the United States and India are not just part of the conversation. We are a crucial driver of the conversation and of the solutions. Which brings me back to the 2+2. I would say if I had to summarize it distinctly, most of the discussions really centered on peace. How do you build, sustain, establish peace in the world? And how can we have durable peace that the United States and India work on across the world in the face of new and existing threats? And by those threats, I don't just mean war. A peace that's threatened by health challenges, by climate challenges, by poverty, by perceived or real divisions between geography, north, south, east, west. And as the joint statement showed, as a lot of veterans, I welcomed, I think, the fourth former ambassador to India from the U.S. this weekend for an informal conversation in my house. And all four of them in the last 2 weeks as I've met them have said, we can't believe how much substance are in the joint statements that are put forward. It's clear you're doing deep, serious, important work that isn't just about saying we will talk more, but we will do more. And I think the joint statement reflects that. Both countries resolved to promote a resilient, rules-based international order, to safeguard a free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific through the Quad and other mechanisms. On global issues, the ministers discussed the tragic humanitarian consequences of the conflict in Ukraine and in the Middle East, reiterating their stance with Israel against terrorism, but also seeking to alleviate civilian suffering and adherence to international humanitarian law. We also made important steps forward in strengthening our major defense partnership, which continues to grow, increasing acceleration that we've seen through initiatives like the Roadmap for U.S. India Industrial Cooperation, U.S. India Defense Acceleration Ecosystem, so INDEX and IDEX, and expanded collaboration and cooperation in emerging domains. And also, more importantly, because we sometimes just focus on weapons and what's being sold or potentially co-developed, but the operational level of our militaries, which I think is as critical as any equipment. And our countries discussed ways to deepen our science and our technology partnerships to harness technology for the global good instead of technology that harms us and divides us, technology that can connect us and protect us. And these efforts are moving forward at a record-breaking speed under the U.S. India Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, or ICET. Over the past year, we've seen so many advances. We're looking forward to welcoming more visitors in December and January around ICET themes, but so many major investments in Indian technology by U.S. private sector companies, as well as government-to-government conversations, expanding around space, defense co-production, and planetary defense as well. So in short, it was a very successful meeting. I'll give an editorial. I've witnessed many of these gatherings now in my lifetime, and just the warmth between the principles and the depth of the substance is pretty unique for these. Oftentimes people will fly around the world, have 3 to 5 things to talk about. They're important, good to maintain relations. This is at a deeper level. It's at a level in which people know each other over many years now and turn to each other, whether it's U.S.-India relations or whether it's talking about other parts of the world. Increasingly, the United States and India really see each other as collaborators in figuring out the global architecture and the global solutions to some of the toughest things that we face. And that work to promote peace, to promote more prosperity, to protect our planet and our people, those 4 Ps that I talk about really shone through during the 2+2. So with that, happy to answer questions from you and from anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. On 2+2, and also I think the broader direction of India-US relationship, of which 2+2 perhaps is an indication of the fact that institutionalization has taken place of this relationship and India and US being between 2 partners, and that's I think you alluded to in your remarks. A bit more, perhaps, if you can elaborate on we are at the moment in a place where multiple conflicts are raging in multiple geographies, and there might be some concerns, perhaps in this part of the world, that with America so consumed by Eurasia, Middle East, is there enough bandwidth for Indo-Pacific? Because Indo-Pacific, from the beginning, had been a very important part of this conversation. Where do you see the two nations? What are the elements? What are the engagements at the moment on the Indo-Pacific? And was this iteration of 2+2 able to give enough substance to that aspect of the relationship, given everything else that's going on in the world?
I would say at least half of the conversation actually was just about Indo-Pacific, the bilateral relationship and the regional relationship. So absolutely, I would say the proof is in the pudding. We continue to not only see the secretaries show up here in the midst of one of the most critical security moments in our lifetimes, but that priority won't change, and I don't believe it'll change in our lifetime. I don't say that lightly. The nomination of Kurt Campbell to be Deputy Secretary of State, and there's two Deputy Secretaries of State. One was my predecessor, Richard Verma. Speaks to two folks who know India well and know the Indo-Pacific extremely well, being the two deputies under Secretary Blinken, whose commitment to the Indo-Pacific region is clear. The Secretary of Defense continues to look not just at the counterparts that are here, but how we can look at our technological defense futures together. That's a very big step, and something that I think U.S. observers wouldn't believe if you transported them here from 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. There's one other thing that's emerged between us that I find interesting. I call it geometric diplomacy. I joke that the government of India really loves geometric shapes, triangles and quadrilaterals, whether it's the two quads that we have, whether it's the trilateral development partnership that we have with countries like Fiji, and we're looking at other Pacific Island countries, maybe Africa, where we come together, two countries not just talking about themselves, but I think both of our countries do believe that we should play a role in the world. It's easy to make a caricature of that. In the past, maybe India was an online movement, America was part of the bipolar world. It's different. I think both of us come from a place of humility on this, that we can't do everything. And certainly people turn to us as a power saying, can't you solve the world's problems? We want to try, but we know that we can't single-handedly do that, which is why we need a partner like India. And vice versa, I think India knows that when they have a partner like America at a place like G20, look at what we can produce together. Not just in a joint statement that has no opposition or footnotes, but the substance of the statement, which gets into the most pressing issues of women's empowerment, of financial and digital infrastructure, of reform of important international institutions. I do believe we have the bandwidth. I think we're showing that bandwidth, and that doesn't come from just a diplomatic calculation. I think it comes from a core value of understanding what's important in the world for us, and that's the Indo-Pacific.
An ambassador about the U.S. conversation, which I wanted to understand from you, if you go back to, say, February 2022 when the conflict started, to now almost close to 2 years to the conflict. This understanding about Russia between India and the U.S., what has been the trajectory like, and what is the assessment now in Washington about this relationship, and perhaps what should be expected or not to be expected vis-a-vis the U.S.'s concerns and the U.S.'s aims in regard to both Russia and India when it comes to the U.S. engagement?
I think the U.S. understands with our friends that people have different histories and strategic considerations. We also believe that speaking bluntly and forcefully about the principles of international law are important. As I remind our Indian friends, you all know and live even more existentially than the United States, needing the importance of boundaries and of sovereignty to be guiding principles, which is what we're standing up for when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. It's clear, unprovoked, aggressive war action taken by one country against another should not be a part of the international order. But we haven't let that be an impediment. And more than that, we've seen also the evolution of being able to work together to try to continue an agenda that can't be stopped by the conflict of the war. G20, I think, was a good example of that, where India played a clear role in making sure there wasn't Russian opposition, and the United States played a clear role in bringing together our friends and allies to make sure we elevated up conversations even as we spoke our principles, I would argue, even more forcefully in the G20 communique that came out this time than in Bali.
And finally, before I open up, false starts in the past, how optimistic are you that this time we are on a different countries will be able to deliver on what each side needs?
I think this is no longer feeling, it's action. No longer ambition, it's actually real concrete work. And as I said before, it's happening probably really on three levels. It's the development of technologies. It's the sales of weapons and ways of being able to operate, but it's also the operational structures themselves. What came out of the 2+2, for instance, was joining the Combined Maritime Task Force. India is going to be a part of that now. Looking at developing more intelligence sharing, more operational ability to make calls at the commander level should there be conflict. To look at the sea domain awareness, which is really important for India. The Indian Ocean is a place where too many people are flying blind right now, and we need to look at common threats together there. So, the technology ensures in some ways that we will be on this road together. This isn't just a flash in the pan for a year. This isn't just about a weapons sale, but something like the GE engines means we'll be co-developing for decades to come. So it's a long-term commitment to one another. This isn't a short-term thing. And to me, that's the biggest story sometimes lost is while this has deepened, and you can talk about the individual project sales, engagements, co-development, I think both sides now, I was talking to an Indian defense official who said, before we were, not the closest of friends, then we became friendly but not trusting. Now we're friendly and trusting. And I would offer one more thing, we're friendly, trusting, and committed.